a group of passersby help push a car out of its snowy prison on the sidewalk. One of the group could swear she recognizes her friend Jeff under multiple layers of clothing, but the man thinks she's made a mistake. She pulls her scarf down, exposing her face, thinking maybe he just doesn't recognize her. But when he does the same, she realizes it really isn't her friend. She apologizes, trying to leave, but awkwardly enough, the gentleman's also going the same way, so the two formally introduce themselves. Her name is Iris, his name is Simon. Making conversation, Simon asks Iris to tell him something about herself, and she blurts out an emotionally loaded confession. Iris's sister Agnes is getting married, but her fiancé is a sleazeball. She wonders how come no one else in the family can see it and why, when she tries to point it out, nobody listens to her. Embarrassed that she may have said too much, she apologizes, and in an attempt to even the playing field, Simon mentions his own Mennonite parents that live out of town, whom he claims are strict and often still treat him like a child. Getting an idea, Iris asks Simon suddenly if he wants to grab a drink. Iris makes a proposal that the two confide secrets in each other, then never see each other again. Though caught off guard, Simon agrees. His first confession is he's got a terrible fear of horses which, despite her best efforts, Iris can't help but laugh at. She doesn't understand why, especially considering he doesn't have any traumatic experiences with horses, but she respects it. Iris confesses she keeps what she calls a BS journal, where she writes and dates and plans for trips or vacations and never does them. Going back to Simon, he confesses he's only lived in Winnipeg for 3 years, having fairly recently moved from his much smaller hometown. Shortly after moving, he got into a bar fight that he soundly lost, and the fight haunted him so much that he found the social media of the dude that beat him and follows it. Every day, he hopes that something bad happens to the guy as karma. Iris thinks that's pretty messed up, but seamlessly segues into her own story. When Iris was born, she was diagnosed with a congenital heart disease, a tiny little hole in her heart that doctors were forced to operate on. Her parents watched the surgery from a window, and since then, they've always claimed that she couldn't hide anything from them, because they've literally seen her heart. Simon confesses he never does anything like this, never opens up to people. In fact, he often pushes them away, because he's sure that once he removes his mask and shows them the real him, no one would want him. Iris sort of understands. She's always wished to be the out-there girl who makes the wild choices, confiding she's only ever slept with one person, and that was a long time ago. She admits she perceives herself as an unlovable girl. But Simon disagrees, blurting out that she seems like the complete opposite. Iris is suddenly tense, and as if fearing things may be getting too deep, she finishes her beer, opting to wrap up the night. Days later, Simon's friend Gord suddenly pitches him a supposed opportunity to earn $1,000 starring in a graphic film, offered by a suspicious guy. As hilarious as the conversation is, suddenly Simon feels down, thinking about how comfortable and open humans can be with certain people, like how he can be with Gord, but then when you meet someone new, you never know how much is too much to say, or what's oversharing. Understanding where he's going with this, Gord groans, frankly a bit tired hearing about this woman that Simon will never see again, but listens anyway. Gord tries to cheer Simon up, advising him to stop complaining. He's handsome, he's good at his work, he's got all the fish in the sea, and he should absolutely come do a porno with him. Simon rolls his eyes, but his spirits are momentarily lifted. That is, until the boss arrives and chews them out for talking on the job. Iris is at her parents' home, helping the family plan the logistics of Agnes's wedding, but she's in a daze. Her mother questions it, and Agnes volunteers that she's daydreaming about Simon. Mildly irritated, Iris explains for the 100th time that she's never going to see him again, and reassures her fussy mother Rihanna that she isn't dating him. Going back to planning, the group decide that Iris will plan the wedding's budget, after blatant doubts about her abilities and willingness from Rihanna. Agnes makes a Simon Says joke as she tries to convince Rihanna that Iris will do a good job, and Rihanna turns it into a lecture about Iris's choices in men. They're interrupted when the doorbell rings, and Agnes sends Iris to get the door, announcing that it's Justin, her fiancé. Justin almost immediately asks the state of planning, specifically the budget, as he wants to have a hand in it, and the family suggests that he and Iris do it together, yet another fail-safe in case she messes up. Iris and Agnes soon leave to get food. Meanwhile, Gord and Simon, on their break, pull up at a local Vietnamese eatery to grab lunch. Gord sends Simon out for the food, and as soon as he enters the shop, he lays eyes on none other than Iris. As the two start chatting, they each awkwardly admit they were thinking about each other. After some hesitancy and logical gymnastics to get past the proposal they made on the first night they met, they exchange numbers. As Simon leaves the eatery with his lunch, his phone goes off with a text from Iris, wondering if it's too soon to text him. He admits in his reply that he texted her twice already and deleted them. The couple begin non-stop communication from there, and it's obvious from their texts that the chemistry is fantastic. They talk to each other excitedly about any and everything. They arrange a date for the next day. After their text conversation about exchanging playlists of song covers in different genres, Iris arrives at Simon's place, demanding to hear what he's got. He plays a folk cover of The House of the Rising Sun, their chosen song for the evening, and Iris rolls her eyes, having heard this one before. Then he tries playing a metal version of the song that Iris also doesn't approve of. Finally, he impresses her with a reggae hip-hop fusion version of the song that she hasn't heard before. As he grabs her a drink, she looks round his apartment, taking note of his music collection and his tastes. She notes an odd paper bowl, which he claims is purposefully placed at an angle, so that when the world tilts out of balance, he'll have advance warning. Iris gets excited when she spots a real upright bass in his living room. Simon admits he can only play 2 notes. Iris begs him to play, but he nervously refuses, making the excuse that bass isn't a solo instrument. It's meant to be played with a group and connect you to people. Iris admits she can play guitar and sing, but she can't play bass. She'd like to pursue music one day, performing and doing her own shows, and that intimidates Simon even more. He definitely can't perform for her now. Luckily, he hears the snowplow he promised in their texts in the background, and is able to distract her with it. The couple run to a different room, and while Simon explains how this particular snowplow operator seems to be very passionate about his job, they hold hands. The moment takes them as they look into each other's eyes, and Simon leans in for a gentle kiss. Iris pulls away just long enough to lay down boundaries on sex, none tonight, but Simon isn't discouraged. After all, that just means there will be another night, and for now, he's happy with this. Simon gushes like a schoolgirl with a crush over his date with Iris, while Gord tries to get him to practice the Heimlich maneuver. Wondering why Gord is suddenly obsessed with learning the Heimlich, he regales him with the story of what happened on the set of the porno he went to shoot. During one of the breaks, while Gord was at the craft table grabbing snacks, one of the guys next to him started choking, and Gord froze up, not knowing what to do. Eventually, someone else came along and saved the man. But Gord was left disappointed that he didn't have the knowledge or training to be the hero in the situation. Gord persistently suggests that he and Simon take a class on the subject together. Iris is met by Justin so the two can work on the budget, although Iris clearly thinks she'll be doing most of the heavy lifting, as she doesn't trust Justin will keep Agnes's wants at the forefront of his mind. He checks in on what she's accomplished so far, though it doesn't seem like he cares to listen to her responses. He keeps interjecting before she finishes her sentences, and suddenly starts getting touchy with her as he aggressively takes over the computer space. His physical touch clearly makes Iris uncomfortable, and she does the right thing, speaking up and respectfully making him aware that she doesn't like his closeness. Justin claims he's simply just being friendly, acting like it was no big deal and gaslighting her. Shortly after, he kisses her on the cheek, further blatantly ignoring the boundaries she just tried to set. A sleazeball indeed. Iris sits in a daze as she listens to her family prattle on about Justin, and she can't help but roll her eyes when she hears Agnes compliment him. Hearing her scoff, Iris's mother asks what her problem is. Not wanting to rain on her family's parade, Iris tries to claim it's nothing and quietly leave the room, but Rihanna persists in scolding her till she starts coughing. Iris profusely apologizes and turns to escape when Agnes follows after, angrily accusing her. In Iris's opinion, Rihanna is the one being obstinate. She only picks on Iris anyway, but Agnes thinks Iris has an attitude too, and can tell something's not right. Iris snaps at Agnes, suddenly asking if it ever bothers her how touchy Justin is with other women, but Agnes claims it doesn't. It's just part of who Justin is. Agnes thinks Iris is just projecting, taking the frustration of her past relationship on her sister and her family. Iris doesn't even bother trying to explain herself. She meets with Simon at a bar, where they enjoy a game of pool that puts the light back into her face. The time spent with him makes all the bad things fade away, but never for long. Out of nowhere, Justin shows up and calls Iris over, like she's his pet. He immediately starts interrogating her, clearly trying to bully and gaslight her into going back to Agnes, and claiming she didn't mean anything. But luckily, Simon steps in. Justin retreats at the intervention of another man, especially after Iris introduces him as her boyfriend. After he leaves, Simon ensures she's okay before clarifying the whole boyfriend thing, and while Iris admits it slipped out, Simon wonders if this is the green light for them to take the next step. The couple get into a heated makeout session the second they get into Simon's apartment, but as he throws Iris on the bed and they're about to do the deed, she stops him, feeling the need to confess something. She admits she used to be married, years ago, but only for 9 months. Her husband left her. At first, Simon's unsure how to respond, because to him, her previous marriage isn't a big deal at all. He was expecting something worse. Iris confirms she's long over her ex-husband, and Simon matches her confession before they resume, revealing that unlike her, he's had about 30 sexual partners already. Iris eyes him curiously for a bit, but she's not bothered, and the two finally seal the deal. They curl up afterward, laughing together and sharing pillow talk, and that marks the blossoming of their relationship. The two are inseparable, spending all the time they can together, and they're both happy in their relationship. They give each other gifts, and Simon's eyes seem to glow more and more every time he sees Iris smile. It's written all over his face that he's head over heels for her, and he can't seem to fight the feeling. Simon tells Gord how he feels about Iris, but Gord can't fathom it. In his mind, love is an emotion that only 15-year-old girls experience. Simon shares that he wants to move in with Iris, but Gord thinks he's moving way too fast. Simon comes up with the idea to take a solo trip out of the city for a few days, to think about how he wants to move forward with their relationship. It'd be good to be sure of what he wants, and move towards her with clear intentions. After leaving CPR class, Simon searches up some last-minute flights. He calls Iris out to meet him at the airport bar. Simon's tripping over his words as he tries to figure out how to explain what's going on. But Iris observes his bag and pieces things together ahead of him. He blurts out that he's going on a spontaneous trip, and Iris assumes he wants her to come with him. Simon feels like a schmuck as he tries to break it to her that it's a solo trip, and she's misunderstood. She thinks he's kidding at first, but her smile fades as she realizes he's not. Simon stutters as he tries to explain, but he's a terrible communicator, and it leads Iris into thinking that he wants to break up. He quickly tries to assure her that he doesn't want to break up, but then goes on to explain himself very vaguely, and with a terrible choice of words, telling her that he wants to go sow his wild oats, a phrase that traditionally means having many sexual relationships while one is still young, and that when he returns, they can resume their relationship with renewed intent. Iris doesn't understand his logic. She's sure this will just poison everything, but Simon thinks it's worth a try. Iris wonders if her opinion matters in this situation at all. It feels as though his mind's made up. She takes a moment before resigning herself to agreement with his decision, believing that if they truly care for each other, she should be able to trust him. On the bus ride home, her certainty is shaken as she replays their conversation in her head. English not being her native language, she looks up the definition of the phrase "sow one's wild oats," just to be sure she understood him correctly, and of course, the results of the definition makes her stomach churn. Iris discusses what happened with Simon with her sister. Agnes can't believe Iris would just let Simon leave her. Agnes thinks she's setting herself up to get hurt like this, jumping from one serious relationship to another. Agnes encourages Iris to go through a phase of sleeping around, exploring her options, just the same way that Simon is doing. She should go have fun. Agnes commandeers her sister's phone, forcibly downloading an online dating app to get her started. Iris chats up a few guys on the app. First, she talks to one guy, who's cute but doesn't have a lot going on intellectually, and once their small talk fizzles out, which happens very quickly, he goes straight into the sex talk, turning her off. The second guy she talks to goes straight into asking her where her house is, and if she has pictures, so that conversation also gets cut short. She chats with another guy, who's a hunter, but is turned off by his violent hobby. She swipes straight past a man that's old enough to be her grandfather, and finally lands on a decent-looking guy with a dog named Bailey. The guy's got some nice qualities, and the conversation is normal, so before you know it, Iris ends up in bed with him, although the encounter is highly unsatisfactory. As he goes to run to the bathroom, Iris feels like garbage, and she shamefully picks up her clothes to get dressed as she contemplates what she's done. She feels pathetic, searching for her panties around some strange guy's apartment. She looks at herself in the mirror and doesn't recognize herself. Her date returns, apologizing for his poor performance, trying to reassure her that this doesn't normally happen, as men do in these situations. He offers to go again until she's satisfied, but Iris tries to reassure him that she's fine. It's not an issue with him, it's with her. Getting a little emotional, she starts spilling her guts to him, turning the whole situation awkward. Iris confides to Agnes about what happened on her date, but her sister maintains her opinion, and in fact, encourages Iris to go out and try again. Iris doesn't want to try again. She wants to wait for Simon, figuring that this is what he must have meant by sowing his wild oats, because now, she's more sure than ever that Simon is the one she wants. Agnes thinks she's being ridiculous. One crappy date does not a sexual awakening make, believing Iris needs to have more experiences with more men before she feels fulfilled or sure of her options. Just after parking her car, suddenly Iris's phone is bombarded with text message notifications, all Simon's ringtone. Checking the messages, it's made clear to her that he was texting her the entire time he was on the trip, but apparently none of them were sent because of network issues. The last text, however, informs her that Simon's finally landed, and that he, too, got all her texts in one go the second he returned to his home country. Without a second to waste, Iris heads to the airport to pick up Simon. Simon reveals how much he missed Iris in their time spent apart, and he feels terrible knowing that she wasn't getting his texts. He knew she would get the wrong impression. He admits that in the time he had to think, he realized the trip was a stupid, selfish idea, and he apologizes to her for how the time apart must have made her feel. Iris, just happy to have him back, forgives him easily. Simon starts trying to lead into the conversation of moving in with each other, but before he gets there, Iris mentions him sowing his wild oats, and how they probably need to talk about it now. Simon is briefly confused, and when it dawns on him how she interpreted the phrase, he stutters over himself, apologizing profusely. He clarifies that he was alone the entire time, and that he truly just wanted the time to think through what he was contemplating. Simon confesses his love for Iris, asking her to move in with him. Iris is speechless. This wasn't what she was expecting. Why did he have to be such a crap communicator, who takes 2 weeks just to decide how to ask that? She pauses for a minute, now feeling incredibly stupid for her own transgressions in the past weeks, but she's so relieved that he wants to be with her this way. She can't bring herself to tell him. Simon, anxious, prods her for a reply, and Iris says yes. Iris announces to her family that she's moving in with Simon, to immediate argument and disgust from them, especially Rianne, who jumps into criticizing her daughter in front of everyone, even resorting to calling her father into the argument. As far as her mother is concerned, preparing for her sister's wedding is more important than her moving into a strange man's place. Rianne is also concerned about what the family will think, especially after Iris already had a failed marriage at 19. Iris sits at the table, playing with her noodles as she tries to ignore her family's judgmental gaze. Rianne brings up once again that she's seen Iris's heart, and Agnes murmurs that Iris is going to do what she wants anyway, regardless of what her family thinks. Simon and Iris move in together, box by box. They bring in all her things and slowly unpack, and as they do, the couple get to know each other more intimately. Iris brings her use of ironing boards, her natural organizational skills, her unique food culture, and a much-needed feminine touch to Simon's bachelor pad. As they're done packing up the kitchen, Iris invites Simon to Agnes's social on Saturday to meet her family. The two take a break after completing the unpacking. To celebrate, Iris asks Simon to play his bass again, but he tries to avoid it. Iris tosses a cushion, booing him. She doesn't understand why he keeps running from it when she's staying here now. He won't escape her. He'll have to play it eventually. Simon diverts her attention, claiming he's got something even better than the stupid 2-note bass performance. He leads her into the kitchen, where he surprises her with a cake. She bursts into laughter when she sees the design on the cake is a very bad drawing of her. Simon admits his sketch wasn't the best, and he'd honestly expected the bakery to do a little more. Despite the awful artwork, the sweetness of his gesture hits her in the gut, and suddenly, she's overwhelmed by emotion. Her laughter melts into sobs as she grabs his hand, weeping that she can't do this to him. She begins apologizing before she's even admitted what she's done. Simon's confused and concerned at her sudden outburst. Iris finally admits she slept with someone else while Simon was gone, how she interpreted his leaving, and how lonely she felt. She truly just wanted him there. Simon is so in shock, he doesn't speak for almost a minute, and when he does, his voice almost breaks. He wonders why she would wait till now to tell him, and Iris admits she got lost in the moment when he got home and confessed his love. It hadn't seemed like the right moment. Simon is both livid and broken-hearted, questioning everything about the relationship. He completely blames her, taking no responsibility for his poor choice of words, and claiming that's not what he meant when he said that, as if that somehow changes what the phrase usually means. But Iris defends herself. Simon asked for a break, which usually suggests that the couple won't ever get back together, or one partner wanted sexual freedom, from which they might not return. Simon cruelly tells Iris that she's the one who destroyed the relationship, and grabbing nothing but a robe, walks out of the door with no further conversation. Iris sees his shoes are inside, so she assumes he's on the other side of the door, and tries to beg him to come back in so they can talk. But when she hears no response and a door opening in the distance, she checks outside to realize that Simon has left the building. She tries to text Simon, only to realize he's left his phone at home too. She has no choice but to wait. Hours pass with no sign of Simon. Sun sets, and still no word. Worried, she tries calling Gord to find out if Simon is with him. Gord is weirded out to see Iris call, but lets her know that Simon isn't with him, and that she should stop freaking out. Apparently, Simon does this all the time. Iris learns from her conversation with Gord that Simon's parents live in Morden. Iris heads to her parents' house to help prepare for Agnes's social. She greets her cousin with a warm hug, but when she gets to her mother, sister, and aunts, they all give her a side eye, as though she's not welcome. Breezing past them, she greets her father and asks to borrow the car, lying that she's meeting Simon in Morden to meet his parents for the first time. Arthur pulls his daughter close and tenderly lets her know that despite her mother's attitude sometimes, Rianne truly loves her, and he loves her too. Arthur tells her that if she truly loves Simon, and believes that he's the one for her, then Arthur will support them 101% in building their future. But he begs her to be sure of it, not wanting her to put the family through drama if he isn't. Iris nods, tears in her eyes at her father's kindness. Iris sets off to Morden, where she tries to search up listings for Simon's family, but her phone's got no signal in that town. Getting out, she locates a local library, trying to get the information there, although when she checks the phone book, there are hundreds of Friesens in Morden. Exiting the library, a Filipino lady stops Iris and asks if she's okay, noting she looks a little lost, and that she's clearly not from around there. Iris explains her situation, and that she's looking for her boyfriend. The woman admits almost everyone around here is a Friesen, and that she doesn't know him, but that her daughter might. She invites Iris back to her home round the corner to get more information. They arrive at Marcial's house, and she introduces Iris to her husband Ramon, who invites Iris to stay for lunch, in typical Filipino fashion. Marcial asks her daughter Joy about Simon. Joy tells her family where his house is located, as if it's common knowledge. Ramon asks Joy if she could lead them there, and she agrees, but she warns Iris that nobody has been to the house in a long time. Iris is confused at that, unsure what to expect, but she goes anyway. She's dropped off at the house and begins to investigate, noting the entire thing is surrounded by a bunch of horse figurines and paraphernalia, which would explain Simon's fear of horses. The house looks completely abandoned, and she's about to give up when she notices a girl nearby, approaching her and asking her if she knows Simon. The girl, Allison, confirms that she knows him. She tells Iris that Simon and his dad used to live there, but Simon's dad was an alcoholic and who passed away 3 years ago. Simon stuck around to take care of his father, but after he passed, apparently Simon just boarded a bus to Winnipeg, and no one has seen him since. Everything starts clicking for Iris about Simon's behavior, and she looks anxious about this new information. She tries asking about his mother, but she left when Simon was 3. Defeated, Iris returns to her parents' house and greets Agnes, who's just on her way out the door, but is being suspiciously kind to her. As Iris greets her cousins and aunts, she finds that they are also being unnaturally nice to her. Arthur breaks the news to her that her family knows Simon left her. As it turns out, one of the aunties knew the family in Morden, and what happened to Simon's parents. Arthur tells her to apologize to her mother, and it's Iris's last straw. She doesn't understand what she's apologizing for. It's her decision and her relationship, but the more Arthur insists, the more upset she gets. She storms off to Rihanna and finally stands up for herself, stating firmly that she doesn't have to apologize for anything in her life. Her relationships are none of the family's business, and she doesn't care if Rihanna thinks she's brought shame to the family, because that's what Rihanna's made her feel every day of her existence. They get into a screaming match, though it seems no matter how Iris cries and tries to explain that she married Baum for the family, or brings up the fact that her mother never once asked her if she was okay during any of this, her mother doesn't listen. Rihanna's response to her daughter's tears is asking why she can't just marry a nice guy like Justin, and Iris spares no time in revealing that Justin is a creep who often gets touchy with women. Iris feels that forcing Agnes to marry Justin is going to end just the same as her failed marriage. Simon happens to be on the other side of the door, listening to the argument, but unable to face any of it, he turns and walks out of the building. Simon walks right onto a bus, as if in a daze. He sits there, spaced out for the entire trip. He meets the end of the line, then wanders into a diner, where he sits all day like a statue, till closing. After getting kicked out, he boards another bus, where he falls asleep in the backseat and awakens at night, trapped inside. After letting himself out, Simon somehow gets himself home, and Iris walks in to meet him having breakfast. She immediately starts freaking out about how worried she was, and Simon quickly stutters to explain himself. He wasn't thinking at all, and this is just something he does, a bad habit he picked up from his mother that he's been trying very hard to break. Iris tries to comfort him, communicate with him, but Simon's eyes are still cold and distant. Iris feels that this coldness isn't fair of him. He had no idea how she felt, being left there at the airport like an idiot while the man she loved told her he was going to sow his wild oats. And she breaks into tears trying to explain her feelings to him. Of course, she didn't want to betray the one person she cared the most about. Simon can't stand to see her cry, and feeling like an idiot, he holds her in his arms, apologizing profusely. They start kissing, and are about to have make-up sex when Iris asks if there's any other secret Simon would like to share, but he says no. Iris confesses about her trip to Morden and finding out about his parents, confused as to why he doesn't just tell her. But Simon insists that Allison was talking about someone else, it wasn't him. Trying to provide a safe space for him emotionally, she insists it's okay, that he can be honest, but he stops, turned off by the conversation. He turns and walks away, avoiding her as per usual, but Iris chases him down, pinning him down on the couch and resuming, while simultaneously lecturing him on his avoidance. She lets him know that he doesn't get to lie to her if they're going to be in a relationship. That stuff is for one-night stands, and if he's going to keep things from her, then she doesn't want this anymore. Simon runs to the bathroom to try to get over the shock of Iris having an while dumping her, and is left in disbelief when he hears her leave the apartment. Simon commandeers Gord to take him to Agnes's social. Iris greets her sister's guests, including Marcial and Ramon from Morden, who she sadly informs that things didn't work out well with Simon. Agnes's behavior has changed for the better, with her now chewing out her touchy fiancé every time he gets a little out of line with her sister, which makes Iris very happy. The party's going great, till suddenly she hears 2 notes of a bass playing. Mortified, she runs to see Simon on stage performing a terrible song he's made up as an apology. Her cousin thinks it's karaoke and grabs Agnes to join in. Simon is in awe when he hears her voice, and soon the crowd gathers to listen to their makeshift performance, including Renee, who's so shocked that she starts choking on the hors d'oeuvre she's eating. Despite both Gord and Simon being there, Iris is the one who gives Rihanna the Heimlich, ultimately saving her. Simon gets kicked out of the social for impersonating the band, and Gord makes fun of him, as every good friend should. Iris finds him, scolding him for his excessive gesture, and how this further complicated her plans for the night. But after she calms down, she mentions that Rihanna wants to meet him. Simon is shocked, but dutifully accompanies Iris back to the event. She shakes her head, still in disbelief as what he's done. But she can't help the smile creeping across her face as she takes Simon's hand once more.